Welcome to class. I'm Trevor, and I post D&D videos every week, generally on Wednesdays. This is the third video where I go over D&D basics. In this video, I'm going to continue dissecting the character sheet, and I'm going to focus on passive perception, other proficiencies and languages, attacks and spellcasting, equipment, and features and traits. Let's start with passive perception. Passive perception is 10 plus your wisdom modifier. This is essentially your default perception without having to choose to perceive something. This is just what you notice by default. And this is important because sometimes the DM wants to give a player, or a character I guess, information and needs to decide which character is going to notice that thing, if it's something involving perception, right? The way I think about it is sometimes you will choose to search through something because it looks suspicious. Well, you need to be able to notice that first. Technically, perception is not the only passive skill. You also have passive insight or passive investigation, and these are more of a DM tool for the DM to know who might get information first at the table. All right, let's move on to other proficiencies and languages. Based on your race or lineage, class, and background, you're going to have other proficiencies in language. And this is where you're going to write down what languages you speak, which are probably going to be common and some other ones, and you're going to write down what you are proficient in that are not skills. For example, you might be proficient in thieves' tools, or a musical instrument, or a gaming set. There's a laundry list of things that you could be skilled with that relate to skills, but don't get bubbled in or written on the character sheet elsewhere. This is also a good place to write down what weapons and armor you are proficient in, because you might be proficient in a particular set of armor, say heavy armor, but you might not have heavy armor yet. So if you write down, hey, I'm proficient in heavy armor, I can wear that, then when you find it later or have enough money to afford it later, you make sure that you can pick it up. It's a good way to know, okay, I can use these things, but I might not have the actual thing yet in order to use it. Right next to other proficiencies and languages, we have equipment. Equipment has an area for your gold pieces or all of your different currency pieces, and it's also where you write down what you have. It's a fairly small space for what you're probably going to be carrying with you, and I would honestly suggest having an additional sheet to write down your equipment or write it on the back of your character sheet. There are a lot of other systems that players use, but I know from experience that my players tend to run out of space in this area for what they're carrying with them. Let's talk about attacks and spellcasting. We'll start with attacks. Attacks fall into two categories: melee and ranged attacks. For the most part, melee attacks are based off of your strength, and ranged attacks are based off of your dexterity. I say for the most part because there are some weapons, say a rapier for example, that are based on your dexterity rather than your strength. Look out for the finesse property when you're looking at melee weapons, and that'll tell you that you could possibly use your dexterity instead of your strength. In the first box, the kind of grayed out box, you'll write the name of the weapon that you are using. Then you'll write the attack bonus. The attack bonus is the relevant skill, and if you're proficient, your proficiency modifier. So let's say it's a rapier, and you have +3 to your dexterity and +2 to your proficiency. That's going to be a +5 in that attack bonus. That is what you will add to the d20 to see if you hit the target's armor class. In that last rectangle, you'll write damage. Damage is listed for all of the appropriate weapons, but remember you also add the relevant skill to the damage for melee and ranged weapons. So if you're using dexterity, like our example with the rapier, you will also add the dexterity to, you'll add your dexterity modifier to your weapon's damage as well. You don't add your proficiency to damage. Proficiency is, again, how skilled you are in using it. Just because you're skilled doesn't mean you are necessarily doing more damage with it. This area can also be used for spellcasting, and the way my players tend to use it is for cantrips or commonly used spells. Cantrips work similarly to ranged attacks, but depending on your class, you will use a different modifier for your attack rolls. Now, some spells don't need attack rolls, they need the target to make a saving throw, but it's all explained in the description of each spell. My suggestion is that if you're a spellcaster, the spells that you use most often, especially in combat, you're going to want to put in this part of your character sheet. If you use spells in role-playing or in other situations, then you don't necessarily need to put them here. There's a separate sheet for spellcasting as part of the character sheet anyway. But I would add cantrips here especially, because those are the ones you're going to be using most often. Finally, in the last column on the character sheet, at least that we're going to talk about for this video, we have features and traits. Your race, lineage, class, background, all of the stuff that goes into your character gives your character a lot of features and traits. It gives your character a lot of options and things that they can do. If you're a dragonborn, you can breathe fire. If you're a halfling, you can hide more easily. If you're a rogue, you get some additional bonus actions you can do. All of these things that you get as you level up, you're going to need a place to put them on your character sheet. And that is what this part of the character sheet is used for. It's also very big, and that's the reason why. You might have a feature from your background, a feature from your race, a feature from being level 1 in your particular class. And that's just at the beginning of the game. As you level up, you'll unlock more and more features. And you'll put all of those things here. Some players also choose to put commonly used magic items in this area, or even leave a note to themselves for things that they want to remember to do, right? Always loot the bodies, or don't forget that you can disengage, or whatever. It's a pretty modular space. You can use it as notes if you want to, but its intended design is to be used for the things that your character gets through their leveling up process. And in some cases, you may need to, again, use the back of the character sheet or some other page to kind of flesh out all of the information. Because as you get higher up in levels, your character might get a bit more complex. So that's passive perception, other proficiencies in languages, attacks and spellcasting, equipment, and features and traits. I have one more of these basic videos coming out that focuses on personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. And that'll round out how to read a character sheet. If you have any questions about any of the stuff I covered in this video, drop them in the comments down below. And as always, be safe. Make smart life choices.